She thought he was just another cowboy lost at the end of the road, with torn boots, smelling of stale cigarettes and the silence of someone who had been beaten down by life, one of those people the world had forgotten in the back seat of a broken-down truck. He looked broken, but there was something there, behind that tired gaze, screaming silently. As if he were trapped in a time that no longer existed. She tried to understand, but he wouldn't let her. She talked about the city, he responded with silence. She smiled, he looked away. She insisted, and he remained silent as if each word were a knife returning to his chest. He said nothing, but the way he held his hat said it all. Someone had been there before her, someone he hadn't been able to bury yet. He wasn't just another man from the countryside, he was a living graveyard of broken promises, dead loves, and hopes that never sprouted. She wanted to stay, but she felt she had arrived too late, like someone trying to water a plastic flower. He didn't ask for help, he didn't want consolation, he just wanted the world to stop poking at the wounds he had learned to hide with silence. But she saw everything, even without understanding anything. She saw the way he looked at the sky as if begging for a sign and receiving only silence. She saw the way he drank his coffee as if it were weak poison, just to keep his body functioning. She saw that his heart had been gone for a long time, and that what was left there was just the shell of a love that died fighting. He said everything was fine, but his fine was full of holes, cracked, dirty, shattered, and even so, she remained there, sitting on the porch, talking about nothing, hoping that some part of him was still alive enough to hear. But he only heard the noise of the past knocking at the door, remembering a name he no longer said, a voice he could not forget, and of a promise he made looking into the eyes of someone who never came back. The farm floor knew more than anyone else, because that was where he knelt for the last time, cried silently and screamed without opening his mouth, and even so, he woke up every day, put on his old shirt, fixed the fence as if he still had someone to take care of, because his love hadn't gone away. It was buried right there, under the ground that she thought was just earth, but it was a grave, it was memory, it was prison, and when she tried to enter his heart, she discovered that there were already people living there, only dead. He never told her what happened, never said her name out loud, but every corner of that farm screamed the name he tried to forget. Every step he took was measured by memories he pretended didn't exist, but that squeezed his chest every time the wind blew. The house still smelled like her, the room was still the same, as if she were coming back at any moment, only she wasn't coming back, and he knew it. But he didn't want to accept it, so he hid behind silence, behind his unshaven beard, behind his low hat covering his red eyes. He took care of the land as if it were the only place where he still had control, as if by digging holes and fencing pastures he could bury his longing. But longing doesn't die, it only disguises itself, and he had already given up trying to pretend that everything was fine, because the truth is that he wasn't alive. He was just there, breathing out of obligation, walking out of inertia, and pretending that it didn't hurt, until she showed up, the girl from the city, with a sparkle in her eyes, full of questions, full of desire to be part of his life, and he just wanted her to leave before she destroyed what little was left of him. But she stayed, day after day. She came back, brought cake, made conversation, sat on the porch and stared at him as if she could see something he himself had forgotten, and he tried to be rude, tried to keep his distance, but she smiled, even so. And it was in that smile that he remembered another, older, stronger one, which now only lived in his memory. She didn't understand why he was so cold, so distant, but the truth is that his heart was already full, not with love, but with pieces. She was too young, too alive, and he was a walking graveyard of promises that no one kept. He never told her about the day the other woman left, he never mentioned the letter she left, the suitcases she packed while he was feeding the horses, the way she drove down the road without looking back, taking with her everything he had built inside. She didn't just take clothes, she took his future, she took his peace, she took him, and all that was left was a broken man tending dead land. But this new girl didn't see that. She saw something beautiful in him, something that even he couldn't see anymore, and that hurt, because loving again meant destroying the statue of mourning he had carved with so much effort. But she stayed there, and little by little he started to talk, not much, but enough for her to realize that behind the silent cowboy there was a soul crying out for someone who was never coming back. And if you're listening to this now, if you're still here, it's because you too have tried to love someone who was still trapped in another love, and you know how much it hurts, how tiring it is, how much it makes you wonder if it's worth continuing to try. So pay attention to what I'm going to tell you, sign up for this shit now, because this story isn't just his, it's yours too. You've already lived it, or you will, and when you do, you'll remember this shit. So click there, because what comes next is the part where it all starts to really hurt, where the past comes back for good, and what was just silence turns into screams, where his heart is put to the test. And she will have to decide if she loves the man he is or if she continues trying to resurrect what he buried long ago, because not everyone is ready to love what is left after love dies, and there are people who confuse presence with healing, but sometimes, staying close only hurts more, and he knows that. He feels it every time she smiles at him as if there were still hope, but hope there is almost a crime. Because where she sees a new beginning, he only sees repetition, and while she talks about the future, he still sleeps with the past lying on his chest. She thinks she can break down the wall, but she doesn't even realize that the wall is the only thing holding him up. And she stayed, even after all his attempts to push her away, even after the long silences, the short answers, the unexplained disappearances in the middle of the afternoon, she stayed, and maybe that was what started to break him, because no one had ever stayed before. Everyone always left when they realized the size of the hole inside him, when they realized that his gaze wasn't there, that it was stuck in some memory that no one could reach. She began to understand his ways, the strange hours, the scars that weren't on his body, but in the way he avoided talking about tomorrow. She realized that his every move was measured with fear, as if loving again was a risk he couldn't take. But even so, she went deeper and deeper, closer and closer, and with that, without realizing it, she began to peel away the thick layers he used to protect himself. He began to laugh again, not much, but enough for her to notice. He began to look at her with a kind of tenderness that hurt because it was so restrained. He began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was still capable of living something else, even if his heart was still broken, even if her scent was still in that house, even if the old one still haunted his dreams. And that's when hell began to open up, because loving after invisible grief is like building a house on top of a cemetery. Sooner or later the ghosts come out, and that's exactly what happened, on any given day. Without warning, the old one came back, as if the years had not passed. As if what she had broken could be glued back together with a smile, she appeared at the gate, with her bags, with the words he always wanted to hear on the wrong day, and his world exploded inside, because everything he had tried to bury came back walking, talking, asking for another chance. She said she was sorry, that she had misunderstood everything, that she had been immature, that now she wanted to build a life with him, and his heart. That son of a bitch still beat for her, even after everything, even after so much. And it was at that moment that he looked back and saw the new woman standing there, holding back her tears like someone holding on to a love that isn't hers. And there, in the middle of the dirt road, he had to choose between the past he never got over and the present he could save, between the pain he understood and the hope that still scared him. And you think it's easy? You think it's just a matter of choosing and that's it? No, damn it, that was war, a war between what hurt and what could work, a war where whichever side he chose, someone would end up bleeding. He stood there for seconds that felt like decades, looking at both of them, his head spinning, remembering the day his ex left, the way she hurt him, the nights he cried hidden in the barn. But he also remembered the recent days, the new girl laughing loudly, the way she took care of the plants, the way she told him he was handsome even when he didn't believe in anything anymore. He remembered everything, and in that moment, he realized that the problem wasn't which woman to choose, it was that he hadn't chosen himself in years. He was just a consequence of the pain he had let in. So he looked at the old one and said with a trembling voice, "You killed me and only came back because you realized I survived." And she was speechless, without reaction, because she didn't expect that. She thought he was going to run into her arms, but no, he was different, still broken, but another man. He turned to the new one and tried to say something, but she already had tears in her eyes, ready to leave, as if she didn't want to disrupt a reunion that shouldn't have happened. But he held her arm, not tightly, but with sincerity, and said, "I don't know how to love you yet, but if you have patience, maybe I'll learn." And there, at that moment, they both knew that this wasn't a happy movie ending, it was just the beginning of a new struggle, because rebuilding requires more than just presence, it requires the courage not to repeat mistakes. And maybe he would make mistakes again, maybe she would get tired, maybe everything would go wrong like before, but just trying was more than he thought he could do. He didn't choose her because she was prettier, or because the other one screwed up. He chose her because there was a feeling growing there without pain, without patches, without debt. And even though he was broken, he decided to try to live something that didn't remind him of death. He knew it would still hurt, he knew there would still be days when he would remember the other one, but now he had a reason to wake up, and she just wanted someone who would try, and he was trying, for the first time, without running away, without pretending. And if you're still here, after all this, it's because this video wasn't just his, it was yours too. You saw your own story in all this shit, you saw your heart there, in the middle of the mud, trying to understand if it's worth loving again after you've already died inside. So listen, if you loved someone who forgot you, if you stayed with someone who was still living another story, if you tried to heal someone who didn't even want to be saved, you deserve more. You deserve to be a priority, not an option. You deserve someone who doesn't have to choose between you and the past. So if this video broke you, do the following: subscribe to this shit. Because here we don't sell stories with fake happy endings, here we deliver life the way it is, ugly, hard, unfair, but real, and real can also be beautiful, even when it hurts. So click, stay with us, and get ready for the next one, because if this one destroyed your soul, the next one will dig up what's left.